Welcome to the SecureWorld Sessions. We're a cybersecurity podcast that is all about access.
Access granted.
Access to people and ideas that can impact your career and help you secure your organization. Hello there, my name is Bruce Sussman, and I'm Director of Content at SecureWorld and your podcast host. And in today's session, we are in part 2 of our mini-series on mental health in cybersecurity. And we're speaking to CISO Jothi Dugar, who's on a mission to help cybersecurity leaders and professionals manage stress, manage burnout, and the pressure of being in security.
You kind of have to be connected by 24/7 because you have to know what's going on. You have to do incident response. You're on call. You're probably working more than 40 hours a week. And you have to be on top of it with your A game on at all times to deal with cyber incidents or outages or breaches at any time in the day or night.
She has some surprising tips on how to manage it all for maximum wellness. Also today, some interesting findings from Trend Micro in its new Let's Talk Cloud series of discussions. Trend Micro is our premier podcast partner. Today's featured guest is a CISO in the U.S. federal government, and she also happens to be a holistic wellness practitioner with some creative ideas on managing stress. And when she's not writing a book or writing on her blog, she's also a dance instructor. But her focus is bringing security and wellness together. She has an amazingly personal story to tell about how burnout impacted her life and nearly took it from her. But instead, it caused her to pivot in a way that may inspire you to pivot as well. Let's go to my interview now with CISO and holistic wellness practitioner Jothi Dugar. And I asked her to start by sharing her story about burnout, but I never expected it to go like this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So a little over 3 years ago, I had a very, very personal healthcare journey that's really transformed my life, really, and just changed who I am from the inside out, but also took me on this amazing journey where I learned a lot about myself and the world and just what I wanted to do here to really make a difference. So it all started with the birth of my third baby. She was a C-section, just like my first two, but this one was quite a different story, and it ended up very differently than the first two. So really, long story short, I was put under the care of an OB that now I know she was stressed, burnt out, working long days, and just really not in the right frame of mind when she was performing my C-section, which then caused me about 3 years to really recover fully from all the complications that had been caused. For the first year, I could barely get up off the bed. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move. I couldn't drive. I couldn't even hold the baby without excruciating pain, pretty much from the neck down. And really, you go through, as a woman, you go through just a whole lot of emotional, mental, and definitely physical roller coasters, just not knowing how and why, what happened, what do we need to do from that point on. And the surgeons at the time really didn't know what was going on either, but they all came to one conclusion, which was I had about 6 weeks before this became a life and death situation, according to them. And they literally only gave me 6 weeks, and they said, you need multiple surgeries, and we can't guarantee even those are going to work. But they all agreed that I needed to do something. That's really the turning point in my life where I felt that, okay, it seems like I've been given this opportunity to find another way. I was pretty determined that I was not going to get multiple surgeries when I couldn't even get off the bed, and I'm still suffering from the complications of the current surgery, which was a C-section. And there were a whole lot of things that we had discovered in that process. I had about a 12-inch incision hip to hip. There were multiple layers of my abdominal muscles that were not patched up. I had like multiple hernias. My abdominal muscles were separated by about 6 inches. There was no way I was going to go through more surgeries at that point.
Wow.
So I
Incredible.
started, yeah, thank you. So I started really looking into other options and more holistic wellness and natural healing modalities without really knowing anything about them. But I thought, let's give it a shot. So I started one by one, and each of them took me to a certain stage and of healing. So I was making progress, very slow as it is, but at least I was making progress. And then I learned how to combine different modalities together to make it more of an integrated approach. So at some point in time, I think it was about a year down the line, where I was actually able to be functional again and move around and walk. Although it took a year, it was still more than 6 weeks, which is what the doctors gave me.
Right.
And I was actually getting better, just not 100%. So I really learned the art of just combining different modalities together. And a big part of that was my own mindset. I had to change my mindset to be positive and be look towards the future, and just have faith that, yes, I'm going to come out of this and I'm going to heal, and I am going to be there for my kids, all 3 of them, and my husband and my family. So it took about a good 2.5 years to really get back to about 99% healing, to where I could actually be myself again.
Wow, that is incredible. And now you have a number of different roles or hats that you wear. Can you tell us about those?
Yes. So as part of that journey, I changed my whole approach to life, to health for sure, health and wellness, but also to my career, which was in cyber. So after I started healing myself to a certain degree, I started actually learning these different modalities, so that I could start helping other folks out there to advocate for themselves, for their own health, for their own life and wellness. So I became a holistic wellness practitioner and coach. I started my own practice. I also started health and wellness programs in my organization where I work, and also in my local communities, to really get everyone involved and know that there are options out there. There's always another way, and to not just take someone's word for it when it comes to your own health and wellness. You know your body best. But also, it also came down to mindset as well. So the mindset is where it all begins. So just changing the mindset in people and in organizations is what I am truly passionate about now.
Yeah, well, I can hear that, and I can understand with what you've been through, how that would just, you had to have a mindset of pushing forward to make it through. And so that's really impressive. Well, thank you for sharing that background. And one of the key topics that I wanted to discuss with you today, Jothi, is about CISO stress and burnout, security team stress and burnout. And I know you've done a lot of work around this. I mean, what kind of toll do cyber professionals face in their roles, in today?
Sure. So some of the common stressors that cause distress for cyber leaders and just even for cyber staff is this is one of the few, if not the only field where you have to be connected to work 24/7. In the given world that we live in today, almost all of us are connected 24/7 in some way or form, because we choose to be. We have phones, gadgets, computers, TVs, social media everywhere. But in cyber, especially if you're a cyber leader or a CISO, you kind of have to be connected by 24/7 because you have to know what's going on. You have to do incident response. You're on call. You're probably working more than 40 hours a week. And you have to be on top of it with your A game on at all times to deal with cyber incidents or outages or breaches at any time in the day or night. And mistakes can be costly. You could cost an organization a lot of money or a big reputation hit, or it could even affect their people pretty significantly. So all eyes are on you. There's high pressure, high visibility, and that's just on the work front. But if you look at a person from a holistic point of view, work is only one aspect of you. You have home, family pressure. You have financial concerns, or it's an aspect of you that you have to really, put a lot of importance on. You need social, connections just to feel fulfilled and happy. And then there's health and wellness as well. But, without good health, you can only do so much. So, especially in this field, you're always wired. You're always on the go. And there's really little to no downtime. I found myself working even while you're on vacation because you have to stay on top of anything that may happen. So there's, that doesn't lead to a very happy, peaceful, and calm lifestyle.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And you know what? That sentiment has certainly been echoed with security leaders that I've interviewed at our regional conferences around the country. And one interview from the podcast that comes to mind, and yeah, I think this illustrates exactly what you're talking about, Jothi, is his name's Graham Payne, and he was the vice president fired from Equifax after the mega breach because his group was in charge of the unpatched struts vulnerability that didn't get, remediated. And he was at a birthday dinner with his wife when he got the call that they'd been breached. And I mean, he said that birthday was shot. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just, right. It's amazing how you have a tough time getting away from it. I mean, that's got to be part of the thing, right? Is that you just can't get away.
Yeah, and you can't really say I'm on the beach, tell the hackers to kind of hold off a bit, or
this is the week I'm on my cruise, so no incidents this week, please, right?
Yeah, and really what happens is your body and your mind goes into crisis mode, and for a common person, you tend to go into crisis mode very seldom. It's when you get that phone call that you never expected, or there's very seldom times in your life that you really have to go into crisis mode. But when you're in security, you kind of go into crisis mode on a daily basis sometimes, even if it's not an incident, but anything can be an incident. Outage can be an incident, and you never know. So whenever you just hear of anything going on, you go into this fight or flight mode on a consistent basis. And at some point, your body starts getting used to that. So if you look at the process of how that works, you go into this alarm mode where, it involves physiological reactions. So you basically go into a fight or flight or freeze response for survival. Then you go into a resistance mode. So this is all well and good if the stressor resolves itself, but if it doesn't, then you're in this constant alarm, resistance, and exhaustion mode. And in security, it's if you're doing this on a daily basis, then you're basically staying in this crisis mode 24/7.
So how do you break out of this and remain on your A game at the office and in your personal life? We'll unpack that part of our interview after this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Trend Micro is our premier podcast partner, and I want to tell you about a recent episode they published called Let's Talk Cloud. It's the inspiration for today's Trend Micro Top 3. Number 1, the discussion reveals that executives and engineers have quite different perspectives in cloud adoption decisions, and it also unpacks what those are. Number 2, what are the best ways to build effective teams? That question is answered. And number 3, the discussion covers why the board of directors really needs a business reason or reasons to buy in on migrating to the cloud. Now, I've linked to the discussion in the show notes, so be sure to check it out. It's on the Trend Micro YouTube channel. Today, we're speaking with Jothi Dugar. She's a CISO and a holistic wellness practitioner who brings those two things together. And the idea is to get us out of panic mode in security and help us manage the stress. Wondering, how does that impact your ability to respond to a major incident, either personally or within cybersecurity? Because it's got to take you off your game, so to speak, in a way. Or, what would you say about that?
So that's when you need to make a choice on how are you going to react when your good friend stress shows up in your life. And I came up with a new definition of stress because I had to.
Okay, yeah, let's hear it. I'm excited, yeah.
And I thought of it this way. The thought that you had it all under control is being tested and you are reaching for a solution in the moment seem to be a little bit more palatable in my mind versus the common definition of stress that, there's this major crisis and you can't do anything about it, which is hardly ever true. There's always things you can do to respond in any situation instead of reacting to it. But it all starts in the mindset. So if we consider stress as just something that, okay, well, I thought I had, letting go of the thought that you had it all under control. Okay, the universe is just testing that theory. And right now you're just reaching for a solution in the moment. And that's the key in this. It's just understanding that here's a situation in the moment. But guess what? There's another moment that's coming.
Right. The hits keep on coming, as we like to say. Yeah.
If you survive past this moment, because this moment is really all you have. And that's really key to remember in any given situation, not just in crisis mode, but this is the only moment that's guaranteed in your life. So you have to choose how you want to react, respond, and what is your responsibility in this moment is how I would approach every moment in life. There's really no point thinking about it, because the moment something happens, especially in the security world, is like some management, I wouldn't say all, are going to come like, well, what happened? Well, how did it get this way? Who did what? I'm like, really, that doesn't matter at this point.
Right. We can talk about that later, but we've got something to deal with something else to deal with right now. I get you.
Yeah. And it's the same way that you would respond to any crisis moment or an incident at home too. So, your kids start beating each other up. It doesn't matter who did what at that. Like, we'll get to that later on.
Wait, have you been looking in on my house? I've got 2 middle schoolers. That can happen. Yes.
And it's really easy because what happens is it's kind of a defense mechanism in people's brains. Because by focusing on the past, it's almost forcing you not to focus on the present moment.
Right.
Versus if you just concentrate on the present moment, then, you can take more responsibility for what do we have to do right now in this moment. And then we'll look back and do lessons learned from the past later.
No, that's good. That's really good. So I like the idea of realizing this is the moment that matters and what's your response going to be. I like that framing, as you said. the thought you had it under control, but you don't. So now how are you going to respond to it? That's good. What other things would you recommend during times of stress or anxiety, or, what can we do to help find the right balance? You know what I mean?
Sure. So one aspect of it is managing expectations. So the expectation that you put on yourself and others as well plays a huge role in leading to anxiety, stress, and distress if they're not managed well or adequately. So what do I mean by that? So if we take a look at what is called the emotional guidance scale, this was created by Esther Hicks from the book Ask and It's Given. It talks about the different emotions that human beings face. Not every single one of them, but there's a general list. And people often think that they want a magic bullet fix. So, okay, I'm feeling really angry right now, or I'm feeling grief. Maybe you have to grieve the loss of not just a person, but maybe, there's something that you really wanted to happen, like an event, and now you don't get to go to it, or people's weddings are being, they have to change their venues or make it more close knit. So there's a lot of grieving that's actually normal for a human being, but most people don't take the time to do that. But they expect to go from this bottom emotion, which is like anger, grief, sadness, to just full blown bliss, happiness, and joy in a matter of minutes, and they're looking for a quick fix. And that's when they really need to manage their expectations. So we, in this emotional guidance scale, there's different emotions, and really the key thing to do when you're really down or in the crisis mode is to just take one step up in that scale. So you can't go from frustration and pessimism all the way up to joy and freedom immediately. So maybe I'm really angry right now, but then what are some thoughts I can think to myself? What are some affirmations, or what are some things I can be grateful for that will just take me one step higher? So instead of anger, I might feel a little, worried, but that's still better than anger. And
So I
then
like that.
maybe
So the picture you're painting, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think the picture you're painting, so I can't go all the way from I'm really mad about this to, hey, it's great, but I can
right.
take an incremental step to improve my own wellness within that moment. That's what you're saying?
Yes, in
I
that
love it.
moment,
I love it.
and then keep going, and it
Right.
doesn't have to happen in seconds. Okay, so all morning I was angry and upset, but now I just feel a little worried and maybe just a little down. That's great. You just took like 5 steps in this emotional guidance skill.
That is awesome.
And then just keep going from there, and don't look backward, I guess is more important. Keep going forward. And that's one thing I learned from my healthcare journey too, because a lot of people were asking me, even my own husband, well, do we want to do something with the OB? Do we want to look into malpractice or get a lawyer? Or, she needs to pay for what she did. I'm like, well, you know what? That's not up to me. Yes, you could go that direction and it's an option, but all that's going to lead to is months and months, or maybe even years of just more negativity. That's just going to probably keep me in this state for much longer than I want to be in. So,
Yeah.
I'm just going to reach for the next best feeling thought. Right now I'm feeling, and really at some point in time, I had to think to myself, like, okay, well, that's great. I woke up today and my eyebrows don't hurt. So there's every other part of my body was hurting at that time. But I had to think
You,
about the one part.
yes, exactly. At least you could find something that didn't hurt. I see what you're saying. That was a choice, right? You had to choose to do that. I got it.
The choice. And sometimes that's in my organization, people there is such a thing as being overly optimistic, but I'm like, I'm not overly optimistic, I'm just being realistic. So in this incident, pretty much, a lot of things might not have been correctly. But there's one thing that we did correctly is maybe identify that there's an incident going on.
Yeah, right.
Not everyone
No,
can say that.
that's right. Exactly. I love it. And look, we're laughing about that, and that could be a really stressful time. So anything to lighten the mood a little bit, right? And that's great. Now, I want to ask you, Jothi, because I've heard that you have. I mean, I was thinking about all the different hats you wear. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you're a dance director, you're a CISO, you're a holistic health and wellness practitioner, an author, all these things you have going, a mom. But I understand that in the midst of all that, you have some exercises that can kind of help us regroup during a stressful situation. And maybe one of them is what you just described, taking it one step above at a time. What's another exercise that you like that can kind of help calm us down and de-escalate the stress?
Sure. So I usually talk about, I'm all about keeping things simple and effective that you can do anywhere at any time in any situation.
I like that
Um,
idea.
and
It's
that's
good.
one. And like you said, since I do wear all of these hats, I need to have simple wellness hacks that I could use anywhere, where I don't have to spend 45 minutes doing a meditation or go to a yoga class. So I came up with 5 different ways. One way, what I call is fact versus story, and just to simplify this, it's just if we just have to remember the truth is only the truth in the moment. And just think about what are the actual facts, and this comes in really helpful in relationships, as you know, especially at home too.
Yes. I'm already picturing this. I like this. I like this. Yes.
So just lay them out and be truthful to yourself. Like what is the actual truth? Did someone not come on home at a particular time? And that's where managing expectations comes into place too. So as long as you have expectations on other people, they're bound to disappoint you because your expectations of them are always going to be more than their expectations of themselves. And what is the story that you're telling about the facts? So there's facts, and then there's a story that you're adding to the facts. And then change your stress script is what I call it. So just choose a more empowering story. Just like what I had to do with my healthcare journey. I could have just spent years and years being really disappointed and hurt and angry and tell the story in that way. But I chose to tell it in a more empowering way. I'm like, okay, this is what happened. Here's the facts. There's no denying the facts. But then here's what happened afterwards, and here's what I chose to do about it. And now it becomes an empowering story versus the victim story that most people love to tell.
That's great. And I was wondering too, just, thinking of your security leadership and the various roles you've had, how does this play out in helping, your team? Because other CISOs might be listening, or, managers or directors of cybersecurity who want to help their team kind of take this approach too. So how do you communicate to the team about some of these things? Any suggestions there?
Sure. So again, just keeping things simple and speaking in a language that resonates with your audience. So, I know in the cyber world, it's pretty male dominated, and most CISOs or cyber staff are very technical. So they probably won't be open immediately if you just go and say, hey, I have this 5 wellness hacks I wanted you to, look into. They're like, okay, that's nice. I don't really need
Right. Exactly. Where's the log file on that? I can hear it now. Yes.
Right. Or I don't have any problems, so
Oh,
I'm
right.
okay. So it's really trying to understand, the one thing I always recommend is you need to get to know your staff from a holistic point of view. It's not just about the work that they do or the role they have in your environment. You have to spend the time to look at them from a holistic point of view and show that you care about them from a holistic point of view. So the work-life aspect, becomes a huge topic when you need to understand who they are as a person, not just, who they are as a CISO or the role they play on your team. And I think once you build that rapport, so it's not just about people that work for you building their rapport, it's also you as a leader building your own rapport for your people.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, really appreciate that. That brings it full circle. And I think we're about out of time. So, Jothi, I'm wondering, do you have any final thoughts that you wanted to leave us with today on the podcast?
Sure. I mean, just understanding the importance of wellness in your life, and the people you work with in your organizations. People first mentality that applies to organizations, but also to you as yourself, to taking the time for self-care. And I know cyber is one of the few fields out there where, people are actively trying to ruin your day all day, every day. So just practicing these wellness practices. I'm happy to send these out to anyone that might be interested. I also have a website, www.jothidugar.com, where I have a lot more helpful tips. And I would also love to send out a feedback form, just to understand what resonates most with you all. And if there's any topics that I haven't covered that you feel there's a great need for, I'm happy to present on that or provide more information.
Okay, that is fantastic, Jothi. I'll tell you, I will put a link to your website on the show notes and also to the feedback form. So you can find that if you'd like to give a little feedback to Jothi or, access the resources that she has on her resource-rich website. So thank you so much for being with us today, Jothi. Really appreciate your perspective as we tackle, this issue, which is a challenge of the stress, the burnout, and the things that come along with defending organizations in cyberspace. So thank you.
Thank you.
That wraps up our mini-series about mental health in cybersecurity. Be sure and listen to last week's episode as well, featuring the founder of the Cyber Resilience Project, with cyber being spelled P-S-Y-B-E-R. Last thing, have you cruised over to our website lately? Check it out at SecureWorldExpo.com for cybersecurity and privacy-related stories from our news team. Thanks again to Trend Micro for sponsoring today's podcast and to our show editor, Pete, for his excellent work. On behalf of the entire SecureWorld team, I'm Bruce Sussman, your host of the SecureWorld Sessions, and let's catch up again on Tuesday.